All right, so today we're going over the weaknesses of the League of Nations. No weaknesses. There's a few, but this actually shouldn't take that long. Because you guys probably already know, been able to, by the events we've discussed, you've been able to pick out a lot of these weaknesses as we've gone along. You've seen them. So, first up is it was created by an unpopular peace settlement. So, like the Treaty of Versailles. When you looked at the Treaty of Versailles, and also when you think about how, if this was created by the Treaty of Versailles, why would this be an issue? Go ahead. For who?
Towards the losing.
It's bias for the losing countries?
A bias against.
So it's the League of Nations and these peace settlements really were kind of set up to benefit the victors of World War I. That's who it benefits. It benefits France and Britain. Who else really benefits from this? No, we're not in it. Why would this benefit us? Kind of, not really, but you'll see that more later on. So this really is only benefiting, I meant like, does this actually benefit like Poland? The League of Nations itself? Not particular, kind of, but not really. I mean, it kind of benefits Italy, but once again, not really. But, so there's this really kind of pushback because it's part of something that was deeply unpopular. Next, the member states are actually a weakness of it. Specifically, let's look at the world powers of this time period. Who were all the world powers in the 1920s? Go for it. Any world power.
USA, Britain, France, Japan, Italy, and I want to say Russia.
Who was the other world power? I mean, you don't think about them so much because they're so
China?
weak. No, definitely not China. Germany! So think about that. United States, Great Britain, France, Italy, Japan, Russia, and Germany. What's the problem there if those are the world powers?
Half of them came towards the other half came to the other half.
Now think about that in terms of the League of Nations. What's the problem with that? No. Okay, let me go over who the world powers are. Britain, France, Italy, United States, Germany, and the USSR. So as a member state problem, what's the issue if those are the world powers? Ding, ding, ding. The world powers aren't all in it. So if the United States and Russia and Germany aren't in it, is it going to be as strong as if they were? No. No. Not all the world powers are members. Germany, granted, joins in 26. And the USSR in 31. Actually, no, that's wrong. It's 34. And the League of Nations doesn't live much longer after 1934. Do you see weaknesses there? Obviously, that's a big weakness. If the world powers aren't even agreeing to it, well, maybe I'll just make an agreement with the United States instead. Or maybe you get Germany and the USSR making the Rapallo Pact because there's nothing like, why do they care what the League of Nations has to say? They're not members. They get no protection from it. They make their own agreements. Let's do one more on this stuff. I have a hard time pronouncing this word. It's a weird word. Unanimity? Everything has to be unanimous. Is it not a weakness? Who tore apart this weakness? Who went in there and exploited this weakness repeatedly that we learned about last week?
Poland?
France, not Poland. France. I mean, part of it, like Poland was.
France and the Poland.
Yeah, but they did it for their own purposes. Or France with the Ruhr region. France was a member of the council. France invaded part of Germany. That violated the covenants of the League of Nations. They can't punish France, though, because France is a member of the council. So France is obviously not going to vote to punish itself. So here, a member of the League can do whatever they want to because they're not going to get punished for it. Because they're not going to vote to hurt themselves. So this is a major weakness. Major weakness. Another issue is other organizations. You might think of one of these other organizations we learned about last week. I believe we did it Friday. Where did we look for the Corfu incident? The Council of Ambassadors. Specifically, the Council of Ambassadors. They were set up initially right after the Paris peace settlement to help actually get everything organized. All those various different peace arrangements, they get set up to actually help organize the transition of these brand new successor states and help establish borders. So they're not supposed to last very long. However, they continue operating until 1931, well after the League of Nations has been established. And the problem here is you get like the Corfu incident, where Mussolini says, I don't like what the League says, so I want to go with what the Council of Ambassadors says. So the Council of Ambassadors, and the Corfu incident's not the only time, they completely contradict the League of Nations multiple times. And then you get the countries that are involved in whatever the dispute is, they're going to go with whichever answer suits them the best. So this is obviously a major issue. And then you get not just that, but you get countries that just completely ignore what the League wants. Countries that just completely ignore the League. There's a big example of it for you, but I don't think you'll actually kind of piece it together on your own, even though we've learned about it. Can anybody think of an incident we talked about where countries have come together, made their own arrangements, even though they're League members, made their own arrangements, completely ignoring what the League, not involving the League of Nations at all. These countries just get together on their own, make these own arrangements that kind of circumvent the League of Nations. One thing specifically, Leo, phone and mask. Okay. I didn't think, it's just we didn't really talk about it like that though, but Locarno treaties. All those treaties that came out of the Locarno Conference. That wasn't League of Nations. Wasn't Germany there? Germany's not a member of the League. So here you have these countries making agreements with each other and also worrying about borders, because there were some border things that came up with the Locarno treaties, wasn't there? That's a League of Nations issue. Here you had Locarno treaties, Locarno Conference, they completely ignored the League and decided to make their own border arrangements with each other, ignoring the input from the League of Nations. In fact, the League of Nations wasn't even really like, hey, let's get their input. Just, you don't exist. We're going to do our own thing over here. That a weakness? Yeah, if you're there to set up and prevent border disputes, you're not really involved here. That makes you weak in this front. Another one that actually proved to be a weakness is collective security. Why would collective security be a weakness? Shouldn't that theoretically be a strength? One overwhelming weakness with it, though. What's the idea behind collective security? Everyone feels safe. So how are you going to make sure everyone feels safe? Go ahead. Okay, but keep in mind the collective part. Let's say if one country decides to start picking on another one, what's the League of Nations supposed to do? Supposed to step in. Is one country of the League of Nations supposed to step in? How many are supposed to? All of them. So what happens when one country decides they don't want to? You can't do anything about it. There's also one really big weakness of the League of Nations. Let's say another country declares war on another member of the League. What can the League do about it? Why? They have to be unanimous, but like, let's say it was unanimous. What still would be their problem? What do they lack? So what do they lack? What do they not have? What do you need to be able to enforce it? Okay, so what do they lack? They don't have an army. They don't have an army. They don't have troops. So how are they going to enforce it? So the League of Nations has no army. So the idea therein is with collective security, if they don't have an army and one league member invades another league member, what are all the other members of the League of Nations supposed to do? Send their own troops, right? Do you think everybody wants to send their own troops? No, because there's even part of the league in the covenants that says no country required to send troops. So let's fast forward a second to what you know is going to happen. So when Hitler starts invading people, what can the League do? Nothing unless everybody wants to do something. And does everybody have the will to fight right now? Nope. So member states can choose. And once again, you have the whole unanimous. You have to be unanimous as well, which also makes this more difficult. So everybody has to agree that this person's a problem and we need to do something about it, which of course is going to next to never happen. And then finally, national interests. Some countries put their own national interests above that of the League, which when you think about it, doesn't that make sense? Like if you were a member of, like, let's say you were a British citizen, wouldn't you want your government putting your interests above that of the League of Nations? You probably would. You want them to care more about your own country and your own well-being than you would worldwide. Even if it does impact you indirectly, you probably care more about the direct impact. So you get these countries putting their own national interests first, and our big example of this would be Logan and Britain. In what issue?
Poland.
And Poland. When Poland takes Memel, and Britain and France are like, you're fine, you're good. We're not going to vote to do anything because they want Poland as an ally. They care more about having Poland as an ally against Germany in a potential issue than they do about actually enforcing, telling Poland they can't be aggressive and take another country's city. So here you have the various weaknesses of the League of Nations, and you can see how and why it would fall apart within 20 years. And you can also, even though we're not getting, in the past, this class, before they redid the syllabus, this unit was actually the last unit because it focused more on, and the whole beginning part was not really in it. It was just the League of Nations, and then following the League of Nations was the United Nations. So it would tell you how they fixed all this. Because the United Nations still exists, obviously, and it's going pretty well. The United Nations has an army. The United Nations doesn't require a unanimous vote. Oh, and the United States and Russia joined it. So, things that fixed it.